Well, now knowing that basically the first and the second album went out back to back, and it was over the course of 3 months, I think. It was 2017 when we stopped. We basically stopped my previous band and laid it on ice, and all of a sudden I had time, and I was like, okay, I need to do something. And I think I just started. I just didn't think about what I'm doing and how. I mean, I had like a studio experience. I know what to do and I know how to emulate things. So I just went and did what I felt was right. And this is how Solar Spectre came out. And then I was like, okay, I have this now. It's a complete album. It sounds complete to me. So okay, I have a few leftover riffs. I'm going to start with them, and I just didn't stop. So basically, the Anticurrent went. Yeah, I didn't stop composing. It was like, okay, I have this block of 9 songs, and now I'm going to. This feels like an album. I'm going to put it aside. It's finished to me. It's okay, and then I just continue. And this is how the Anticurrent came about.
Greetings, mates. Welcome to episode 172 of Into the Necrosphere. Joining me this week on the show is Xen and Tentakel of Omega Infinity. Long overdue for a catch-up with these two, I think we can all agree. They've put out their new record, The Anticurrent, a couple of months ago on Season of Mist, so they were on hand to talk about that album. And then, as per usual, we went down various other side roads and topics. We spoke about AI, we spoke about performance, we spoke about various other things. Great catching up with them as always, and it's going to be coming your way shortly. But before we get to that, a new band has slithered out of the Australian underground. They're called Christbane. They have a self-titled debut that dropped this past Friday, and they feature the gentleman that oversees the goings-on in another Australian underground gem called Brugoth. I'm going to play a song for you guys right now. This track is Exterminate.
Teacher
You just listened to Exterminate by Christbane off their self-titled debut record, available right now on Bandcamp. I'll post the link to that Bandcamp in the description of the podcast, and if you head over there and you show the boys some love, then let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. Stick around after my conversation with Xen and Tentakel, because I will be reviewing the new Vredensdal record, Sonic Devotion to Darkness, and I will also be giving another full-throated installment of my weekly news rant, where I go onto Metal Storm, I listen to some new music, I give you my first impressions, and we get stuck into a few spicier topics as well. If you're new to the podcast, then make sure that you elbow drop the subscribe button on your platform of choice. Follow me on social media and check out the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store for t-shirts, hoodies, and other ways to strut your stuff looking both fashion forward and absolutely badass. Also, make sure that you follow my fellow horsemen of the podcast apocalypse. Every Monday, Brandon Legion brings you interviews with the finest writers, producers, actors working in horror today with his weekly podcast, Horrible 666. Every Tuesday, there's yours truly casting hexes and slaying poses on Into the Necrosphere. Every Wednesday, my good friend and brother Mike Hill brings you his long-running podcast, Everything Went Black. This past Wednesday, he did an absolutely fantastic episode called The Metaphysics of Fear with Ralph Schmidt of Ultha. Really, really enjoyable, and it's going to be part of a recurring series, as I understand it. So if you don't yet follow Everything Went Black, you need to change that very, very quickly. Every Thursday, there's one of my favorite podcasts of the week, Necromaniacs, which sees the return of Mike Hill to the microphone. Alongside his co-hosts, Mike Scandato and Jeff Kashid, they review horror movies old and new. And then every Sunday, the Reverend Carl Haikara brings you an installment of Soul Knox, where he deep dives into the arcane, the weird, the esoteric. So join me and my fellow horsemen of the podcast apocalypse in the war against shit content, and join me right now as I welcome back to the show for the third time, I believe, and almost certainly not the last time, my good friends Tentakel and Xen of Omega Infinity. So we were just talking before I hit record about, basically I admitted that I was fanning out about your vocals, especially your vocal style on the Anticurrent, and then you were talking about the fact that this is the first time you've ever recorded it by vocals by yourself.
Yeah, I had over the course of the pandemic, basically. I had a vocal booth kind of set up so that I could record myself, so that I could be a lot more efficient with my practice, and then ultimately be able to record myself, particularly for Amiga. Because I'd always wanted to delve into that sort of thing. And so with recording for Near Obscurus is a little bit different, where the sound is a bit more polished with literally everything. And so I wanted to record myself for Amiga because I can experiment a little bit more, take a little more time for myself, and kind of develop ideas and that sort of thing. So pandemic was the perfect time to have that sort of setup, and I got to, flesh out ideas. Granted, it takes a hell of a lot longer to be able to record yourself. It is punishing, but maybe that comes through in the vocal performance for the album.
You were talking about practice. Like, how often are you practicing your vocals at the moment?
I try to practice at the moment every couple of days, in between everything I'm doing at the moment. But I've got to set up, I have to have an actual booth, because if I practice when I live in an apartment, you've got neighbors and that sort of thing who don't appreciate real music.
I'm about to say, who don't appreciate the screams and the growls at unsociable hours of the day.
Yeah, so I try to do practice every couple of days at least. But I'm practicing for coming up tours for Neo, and then I'm recording vocals for another side project, and trying to work out ideas for even Amiga for the next album. But I need to be kind of conditioned all the time, otherwise the work up to recording or tour takes a little bit longer, and you want to be as strong as possible to give the best performance.
Have you found that's gotten the workup or even the toll that it takes on your voice? Do you find that's gotten tougher over the years as you've gotten older?
Yeah, well, you know, when you tour constantly, you know, since 2015 to 2019, Neo constantly toured, and you're, I guess, match fit over that time. And by the end of each tour, you're at the height of, you know, your potential for that period in your life. And so, because you're like a well-oiled machine, and then after tour, you kind of relax a little bit. But yeah, I think it's all about, you know, you learn techniques and what works for your voice, what doesn't, what you need to strengthen. You kind of understand your voice ongoing. And if you're not continually trying to improve what you do, then you're not really going to go anywhere, and, you know, everything will be a constant struggle. So the easier you can make things for yourself, the more efficient everything will be, the faster you'll be at certain things, and so on. So, and when I have 4 bands to work with, I need to be, you know, at the top of my game all the time. But, you know, I'm never happy ultimately. So, you know, maybe one day.
So the vocal booth, have you got that set up in your apartment?
I do.
Oh shit! Okay, that's a pretty cool thing to have. I mean, some people. I mean, you're like, some people have cold plungers, and I think Joe Rogan has like a fucking zero gravity tank or something set up at his house. But yeah, a vocal booth is something pretty awesome to have in your apartment.
Yeah, it's maybe 1.5 times the size of what a phone booth would be, with soundproof walls and whatnot. The sound engineer that Neo used to take on tour built that for me so that I could use it in my apartment. So it's heavy as hell, and I don't know how I would move it if I move. But it was ideal through the pandemic, so I could use that as much as I wanted. I can use it any time of the night, so it's perfect.
But yeah, definitely getting back to the kind of ramp up and the toll it takes on your voice. I remember speaking to Jason from Acrococker years ago, and he was saying, like, right before they properly got back together for Renaissance and Extremis, he was saying to me, like, there was a period of time where he was worried he was never going to be able to do those growls ever again. He said he would try and do it in the practice room, and it just wouldn't sound right. And even if you hear like their return show at Bloodstock, which I think was 2016, like you can hear it, especially like probably from about song 3, song 4, you can start to hear he's struggling a little bit. You know, and he has had, in my view, you know, he's got some of the most ferocious vocals in extreme metal. But it's definitely I think if you don't stay in the zone, as you just said now, I think it's very easy to lose it. And I think as you get older, I think it's much, much harder to get it back.
It is. And I think it's when you come off tour and that sort of thing, the motivation is almost, you've got to deal with that motivation and keep yourself kind of actively doing something. And if you've got band members overseas and that sort of thing, you're the only one that can motivate yourself to be able to do it. You can't go to like a normal jam session or something like that. And so you have to rely on yourself, and you have to develop good habits ultimately to do that. You know, a lot of the time I might get quite busy and I can't, you know, practice for a little while. And, you know, I start to feel, you know, the niggling in the back of my mind that I need to get back into it. Otherwise, it's gonna take me longer to get back into it. But it's something you just like playing guitar or something. It's just something you need to keep maintaining.
Yeah.
It's true for every instrument. It's like it's training that you do. Like you can train your instrument. You have to train your instrument solo. So basically, when I was playing drums in Totalichter, I had to rehearse for myself. But it's also about like rehearsing with a band. So if you rehearse, it's like you train to play together. You train to play the groove. So I think you can tell if, for example, a band goes on tour and hasn't seen themselves each other for a month and just trained on themselves, and then they basically train to groove again on the first days of the tour, and then those first days are kind of everything's not quite together, and after a few days you start to roll.
Yeah.
Like that's different with band that rehearse, that have like a rehearsal space, bands who can meet and be on top of their game before the tour. Like, yeah, you train together. It's training. If you don't train, you lose. Like, it's like if you go to the gym, if you don't train, you lose your muscles. You have to build them up again.
Yeah. I will say though that there's quite a difference between being well practiced and good at what you do, but then there's also being tour fit, and that's a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Your performance that you do live is completely different to how you may practice at home, and so there is that trying to find that place where you can allow yourself to be able to do that and take less time to get into touring mode. So with Nibble of Scarus, we haven't played a show together since June 2019, and we have a tour coming up, and we haven't been in the same room with each other since then, and we have a new drummer and everything, so we need to catch up a few days before the tour to rehearse with everyone for the first time after 4 years, and so we have to deal with that, and then we have to get into the performance mode, and that'll probably take a week or so to get up to kind of maybe where we want to be.
Well, I would also say, especially with drummers and vocalists, I imagine. But I mean, I would imagine it's true of everybody, but drummers and vocalists in particular, that tour fitness is so incredibly important, because I don't think a lot of people realize how much physical exertion it takes for you to be. I mean, with a drummer, it's more obvious, right? But with a vocalist, I don't think they realize how much physical exertion it actually takes for you, or it requires of you, to do a 1 hour set. And so then, because a lot of us grew up watching, Axl Rose running around singing, when we were younger, doing a 2 hour set. I think now, as I've gotten to understand more of performance, and I've had a little taste of it myself, you watch that now and you go, this is fucking inhuman. I mean, people shouldn't be able to have that degree of energy for that amount of time consistently. Clearly, there's quite a lot of cocaine that was done before on the show, but it's like it genuinely is it's a physical endeavor. And I remember hearing years ago Jamie Jasta on his podcast talking to somebody about, like, right before he goes on tour. I mean, he basically starts treating it like fight camp. He's in the gym every single day. He's doing cardio, things like that. And at the time, I remember kind of writing it off a little bit. And then the more I've gotten to know folks and talk to people about it, the more you realize, I mean, that is absolutely essential. Like for any young band that's about to go play, make sure for 3 months in the run up to that tour, you're doing swimming, you're running laps, fucking do whatever you need to do to get ready for that hour, or that, even that 45 minutes that you're going to be on stage.
If there's anything that if there's anything that can make it easier, it's worth doing, because now, well, as you mentioned, with Axl Rose running across the stage, that kind of era, nowadays there's a lot more risk involved financially for everyone, and so everyone needs to take every single show seriously. Every aspect of the show needs to be taken into account, because when you're touring overseas, that's not cheap, and even now prices for everything have gone up quite a lot. And so not only you need to be fit to be able to do what you do on stage, but also it's respect for everyone else on the tour party as well. So it's if there's any advice for any young bands coming up, I would advise looking after your health, practicing all the time, because it's only going to be benefit you in the long run once you actually start touring.
Just as a side question, out of interest, when you practice, like, are you just doing songs from your bands, or do you have kind of specific vocal exercises that you do? The reason I ask is I've been fascinated by this topic ever since I had Kane from the Amento on the podcast. And
amazing vocalist,
vocal coach, spoke to me a lot about different vocal exercises that he does, or things that he recommends people to do. So, like I said, it's purely out of curiosity. But like, what kind of things are you practicing when you practice?
Well, a lot of time when I do it, I usually start with warm-ups, and then I might do scales and things like that to kind of help with pitching and whatnot. I mean, I don't usually sing cleanly anyway, but doing scales and that sort of thing helps a lot. And then a lot of maybe breathing exercises. And then I might practice through some songs, and then try out ideas for new songs and that sort of thing. So it's a little looser than maybe some, I guess, teachers would advise, but it works for me, so I'm happy with that.
And then in terms of the different types of styles that you do, you've done everything from screams to growls to this fucking insane like cosmic behemoth that you are on the Anticurrent. What of those styles of vocals do you find to be the most physically demanding, physically taxing?
Maybe surprisingly, the higher vocals are more difficult for me, I would say. The lower vocals, when I started singing, I always wanted to do black metal and that kind of high screaming. And then I found growling, and I always thought that, death metal didn't really appeal to me too much. Vocal style of, say, Cannibal Corpse or Deicide or something like that. That kind of put me off a little bit from doing that style of vocals. And then over time, I grew a little more accustomed to, because I tried out ideas, and so I could kind of tailor it to myself. I didn't necessarily want to do it exactly like that. My vocal style, I wanted to be a bit more not hollow in a sense, but more expansive overall in sound, as opposed to more forefront. But I'd say the higher stuff's a little bit harder, but I have been experimenting with Omega Infinity with kind of adding kind of a bit more texture and kind of voice textures and things like that, like pitch screaming and stuff like that. So it's experimenting a lot. And Tentakel tells me to basically do what I want, because he's always interested in hearing different types of vocals. And so I think the next album's going to have a lot more experimental stuff on it.
At Tentakel, that must be one of the things that makes something like Omega Infinity as a project so exciting and so interesting to do. Because I mean, I know for folks that don't know, obviously you live in Germany, Xen lives in Australia. You guys are effectively exchanging ideas online, and that's how the albums are coming together. But it must be so interesting to be able to take somebody like Xen, and who has an extraordinary range. Say to him, here's a song, do whatever you want, and then you kind of waiting in anticipation for what comes back.
Maybe waiting too long.
Yeah, but that's exactly the way it goes. It's like if you say there's an exchange, it's not really an exchange. I'm composing everything. I'm giving him the songs, and then he sends his vocals back. And most of the time, that's it. We don't like exchange back and forth and okay, let's change this, let's change that. Most of the times, I would say like 90%, 95%. It is what it is. It's like, yeah, and exactly. I mean, I do write the songs. I do have a certain idea in mind. I know his style. I know what he can do. I'm expecting some things, and then he would deliver, and mostly there is something else, something on top that I didn't expect, and where I say, okay, I listen to it and like, okay, that sounds a bit strange, but weird in a good way. Well, we keep it because yeah.
Some of the stuff that I've sent through, I've done as half jokingly as to whether or not you would accept it. And so, and surprisingly, you have, and I thought, okay, well, it is what it is.
Yeah, because I like to think of like doing weird stuff in a song, not playing it safe. It's like there is always this one moment that if a song gets too boring, maybe to a listener, and there is some point in the song where you would go, "What was that?" and oh, you're listening again. It's like I like to disturb the listeners. I think I have a pretty basic idea of songwriting, like how parts go. I mostly have 2 or 3 parts that I kind of arrange and do variations of. But in order to keep things interesting, I like to do like this one moment that where something happens, like if the listener dozes off, like, oh, what was that? Okay, he's here again. We got the attention back. And I like to think, I like to have 1 or 2 points in a song to do exactly that. But I like to also do stuff on an album, like interludes or whatever, intros, outros, that would disturb what would otherwise be a constant style. I think I like disturbance. I like to, shake the listener and say, hey, we want your attention. Don't do something else,
It's what I would call a pattern interrupt. So it's that kind of jolt that just comes from left field, and as you say, it sort of reignites the person's or the person who's listening's attention. But I mean, the Anticurrent for me, it's an incredibly complex and actually not in a bad way, but a very difficult record to properly get into. Solar Spectre my experience was quite different there, because I mean from the second I first heard it, I was like, this is excellent. I liked the Anticurrent from the start as well, but it really took me a good probably 6 to 7 listens for it to properly kind of sink in. And I remember the exact moment when it did. I was like probably about 3/4 of the way through the record and about spin 7, and it was just all of a sudden, you know how something when you listen to that kind of record, you kind of have this warm feeling where all of a sudden it's like, okay, all of it's starting to is making sense now. You understand what I mean? It's like, it's very difficult to articulate, but people that are listening to this podcast most likely have experienced it themselves. But when you get that, it's like you've solved a puzzle, and now it's like, okay, now you're digging through the treasure that's that's in the puzzle box. But from memory, I mean, back when we were talking, which is now probably about 2 years ago, I mean, this record was already underway then, if I'm not mistaken.
It was written at that point. And you know what? The third album was also written by that point. So
oh shit! Okay, so there's a third album that's done as well.
So we're just waiting.
Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind when we speak about the third album. Whenever. Just a thing, what you said about like this is a puzzle that all of a sudden makes sense. This is, by the way, and I've written that to Xen. He showed me the new Near Blue Viscaris album, like I don't know when it was, August, September. It was very early, and you were like, okay, give me your opinion on that. And I did the first listen, and I was like, I don't get it. Okay, what was that? I don't, nothing stuck. I felt lost, and then I started to know that can't be it. I was like listening and listening again, and all of a sudden it was like, what did I write to you? It was like I was in a land of fog, and I couldn't see anything, and all of a sudden, like, stuff would manifest out of the fog, and the fog would lift. And after 2 or 3 listens, I had the complete map, and I was like, looking back at my first listen, it was like, okay, now I know, it was like you have to map out the album first, and I think that's what you describe. Like the first listens, you don't know how all of this fits together. You have to look at the big picture. You have to look at the album, and when you give it a chance, I would say if you invest in it, consecute repeated listens, and then you see the whole picture, but you can't grasp it with one listen. It's just not possible. For me, it was the new Near Blue Viscaris album, which I now would say is definitely the best they ever did. Sure. I have said it several times, and I stand to that until you write the next one. Sure. So top that. It's definitely it was demanding. I couldn't, and that doesn't happen to me a lot. Usually, I like to listen to complex music. I get bored very easily. I can't stand like. Now, I'm not going to say bands here, but there are those bands who play it safe with every album, where you know what you're getting, and and it bores me. It's like I lose those bands. I like bands who keep challenging themselves and keep challenging the listener and present, like, they have a style that they stick to, yes, but they would always do something new on the album. I think as a listener, I want to experience that these bands progress and they actively try new things. And even if they fail to, like, with their tries, I would still value a band that tries more than a band that plays it safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I've spoken about this on the podcast before. I think what I want to hear ultimately is I want to hear an authentic artistic expression. That's what I respond to. So what I find is the bands that I'll name one band, Slayer. I mean, I'm to this day will always love everything up to
Never
and including.
got into them. Never.
Well, no, I mean I love everything up to and including Divine Intervention, but from that point on, Diablos in Musica maybe is different because they were trying to sound like a new metal band, at least in parts, and then from there on out, it's just like, well, now we're just going to keep on doing the same thing that we've always done. And from time to time, you'd find a decent song on every record, but they were playing to expectations rather than playing to inspiration. Now, by contrast, a lot of people gave Paradise Lost an awful lot of flack when they put out Host, way back when. I'd been a fan from Gothic when they put out Host. I was like, this is fucking fantastic.
I have too. Paradise Lost, to me, can't really do anything wrong. And the amount of experimentation they've done over the years is incredible, especially for a band that started like that.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I would say the only time when I think they've potentially played to expectations was on their last record, because the last record had very much had a split personality. You had these kind of like almost gothy songs going back to, maybe sort of mid-career era, and then you had songs that had more in common with Medusa, so more of the sort of Death Doom stuff. I felt the Death Doom stuff felt a little like Autopilot, and I might be completely wrong. I just got the sense that they were enjoying what they were doing with those mid-career throwback songs a lot more than they were doing with the rest. So the point I'm making is, again, I don't give a fuck what you do as an artist, but what I respond to is a genuine artistic expression of how you were feeling at the time and what you wanted to get out. Bands playing to a brand rather than playing to their own inspiration. It's just not.
I think you might have coined a phrase there. I think you might have coined a phrase there, like mid-career throwback. I think that happens to a lot of bands. It's like you experiment up to a point, and then we had fun when we did that back as like friends, as kids playing together. We had fun doing that, and then all of a sudden you get this throwback phase, like that happened to Paradise Lost and a lot of other bands, which on the top of my hand, I can't think of. And Flames, for example, the new In Flames, same thing.
Well, I mean, the thing with Paradise Lost, though, is so they had the early career throwback on Medusa and on the record that came before, but both of those records were absolutely sensational because you could hear there was genuine inspiration there. But then with Obsidian, the misstep for me slightly is, as I said, they kind of try to retain that because it had gotten them a lot of, I would assume, because people had generally responded to those songs, but just the songs on the Obsidian just didn't sound as inspired as the songs on the two records that had preceded it. And actually, when they were doing more of the sort of goth rock stuff, it just worked a lot more because it seemed to be what they were more into at the time. No surprise to me that this Host project has come out recently. You can tell, I mean, even when I had Greg on the show, you can tell that that's the sort of stuff that they're into right now.
Yeah.
But what I've always appreciated about you, Tentakel, is I know, because we're friends on Facebook, so I see all your posts and stuff, but you are a genuine fan of music. You post about music all the time. I was about to say, anyone who's watching this on YouTube can see you're a fan of music, demonstrably. And I do think there's something to that. I think when it comes to very often these bands that play to the brand and that bands that sound like they've lost their inspiration, you see interviews with them and what they're listening to and things like that, and either they listen to the same old shit they listened to when they were very young, or they just say I'm not interested in music. When I come off the road, I want to hear silence. And it's like, well, what do you have that's inspiring you or that's challenging you then, or that's making you go, those people are thinking outside of the box, and then kind of getting your creative juices flowing for your next record.
It could even be being comfortable when you've got the same group of people creating the same music. And I guess the individuals, if they're not, if they're not necessarily overly inspired, they may start side projects.
Yeah.
And so when they come together as a, the normal group, it may be that kind of combination that needs, reigniting somehow. But side projects, I think, and then I find that some of the side projects are actually far better than their kind of original projects.
Yeah, because maybe there is like the freedom that you are able to express. Like there is this band that you are in, that you maybe grew up in, that you like progressed as a musician, and you come to a certain point, and you are in. There is this core set of the band, and you just need to be free of that and try out different things. And I think falling back to what you said, like where does the inspiration come from? I was just this morning, I had this this magazine from the German GEMA, which is like the collection of rights in Germany, and they have this magazine, and there was an article. Someone is suing Stable Diffusion. I don't know if you know what that is. There is this AI project, and they are suing this because, I mean, AIs are able to create a plethora of things. Like they can generate artwork, they can generate lyrics, they can generate music. And in order to do that, they have to scobble through, let's say, everything on the internet. And people are trying to sue it. I think in the US, there is they are trying to sue this Stable Diffusion because they feel that this AI is taking copyrighted material and doing something with it. And I was thinking to myself, what exactly is the difference to people like you or me who browse through the internet trying to look for music, to listen to music, to find new things? It's basically, to me, it's the same. You need inspiration. I listen to music all day. I mean, I'm like a bit privileged because it's also my job. I work in the music business, so I am able to listen to music the whole day, and I'm doing that, and I'm always trying to find new stuff. And if I find something that I like, I use the algorithm of, for example, YouTube or Spotify to, okay, this is something similar, and I'm trying. Okay, what is this? Does this also appeal to me? So, I think that's, to me, what the AI does is what a normal human would do. You browse the internet for stuff that you like, and you try to find new things.
But I think the difference between AI and people creating it is AI lacks the true intention, that ultimate goal of what it's a reason why something is being created.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think, when it comes to art, and even there were some people hustling my band saying that even our artwork was AI, and that they wouldn't buy the CD because it had AI art apparently on it, whereas I made the art myself. And so I don't know whether or not to take that as a compliment, but it was, just that, the concept of AI is just it's creeping into everywhere. And so it's, I don't really know what to think what the future holds.
I mean, I've thought about that as well. Obviously, I think about it in the context of my day job, but I also think about it in the context of the arts and of music in particular. But I might be naive in this, but I don't see it as being a particular threat. Certainly not in metal. There's some, you hit the nail on the head, Zen, around I think being able to convey the intent. I think there's an authenticity and an emotion that comes across in the very best bands that no machine can recreate. It's not possible, because the machine can't have those feelings, whether that feeling is despair or anger or just being a total fucking badass. It's like let's take a great band that I'm sure all of us like, Killing Joke.
Yeah, exactly.
Show me an AI that's going to be able to do what Jazz Coleman does with his voice and make you feel what Jazz Coleman does with his voice on the very best songs that Killing Joke has ever done. It's not. It won't happen. And I mean, then the other thing as well is it's also never going to be able to replace performance. So as long as live performance is there and people are going to shows, and I think as long as people have enough of a soul in themselves to which I think will always happen because it's part of the human condition, to respond to a genuine, authentic expression of human emotion, I just don't see AI being the big deal that people believe it's going to be. Not at least for music.
I think it's more a threat to, let's say, insecure, mediocre artists who might think that they, who are not confident enough, maybe in their own art, to say, okay, let me start from another viewpoint. It's like if you're looking to other things or people, I say things because if you look to AI or other artists and compare themselves all the time, it's like you're held back. You're being held back. You can get inspiration from other influences, from other sources, be it other artists, or I do get inspired by things that the AI does. For example, I'm experimenting with it because it's so weird what it does. It's so weird what the computer comes up with, and it's inspiring in a way that to me it's alien. It's something I haven't seen before in this way, and it's inspiring because it gives me something new.
It makes you think in a different way.
My own art. Yeah, I can take it. I can get inspiration from that and try to do something similar, which is not exactly the same. I think if you feel threatened by it, you're not good enough. You should get better or try to find your own way. Your own thing. I don't know what to say.
Well, it's a question of being not good enough, but it's also potentially just a question of the nature of the product you're selling, right? If we look at someone like Beyonce, her last record had 7 different producers. So, if anything, if you think about it, all you're creating within that construct is efficiency. You don't need 7 producers, just have the AI, and you have the AI, have the face. Do you even need her voice because it's so mechanized anyway? Probably AI is going to be able to recreate that. Maybe then you have her on stage dancing. That's that. If anything, it's going to make pop music easier for the pop music industry because you won't need to. You can go entirely on looks. You don't need to have someone with any talent because just lip sync the vocals and just have AI do every single thing. But like I said, that's an entirely different construct to extreme music and to what we listen to.
You mentioned the soul of things, and I'm convinced that people, even if they don't know how to, if they're not involved in the music business at all, if they're not artists, producers, whatever, just listeners, just fans of music, I'm still convinced that people can hear intention, that they can hear and feel soul, like and there are also, I would say, there are artists with a soul in pop music. For example, I'm a big fan of Alicia Keys. This to me is something. She's an artist to me, and if I hear her, I know there is some intent, there is soul behind that, as opposed to other artists that might be cast from a show or whatever, where only a producer is behind it, and this producer is like putting out songs because it's his work. It's just I think if you're creating music, you need to have talent, you need to have intent, and you need to know how to do the craft. I think especially in pop there are a lot of people who only know how to craft something, but it lacks intent and soul, and I think you can hear that. I think the listener feels that. Those artists or projects or whatever, they are hyped. You've got promotion and the whole you have got like a promotion machine behind that, and it will work in terms of you can earn money with it, and then after if you milk that enough, if it's gone, like basically all those shows where you cast bands and everything, there is a producer attached, there is a promotion team attached, and it's like a machine that is built to create success.
Yeah, it's product marketing.
You can create success. You can earn money with it, but then it's gone. It's gone forever. No one cares. And I think real artists stay around. They stay relevant because they don't lose the intent, I would say. So
yeah, a lot of it, they have to believe in what they do.
Yeah, yes. and their music, their art remains timeless, right? So yes. I can guarantee you this weekend, probably some kid is sitting down listening to Grandma and Grandpa's Rolling Stones records, and they're hearing Lady Jane, or they're hearing Moonlight Mile for the first time. They're going, "This is fucking incredible," and that's going to be the case until the end of time. You know, there will be kids every single day discovering Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, you know, Mayhem. Maybe not so many of them, but I mean, I would, you know, Mayhem, the Misfits. I mean, you can name bands dotted across a lot of different genres. We spoke about Killing Joke earlier. You know, Omega Infinity. There's going to be, you know, newer generations discovering that music until the end of time, and it's going to speak to them because exactly to your point there, the intent was there. What you have with a lot of pop music is product marketing. You don't really have.
Yes.
You don't have an intent. The intent is guided. It's like, okay, we've got 10 songs on this record. One is going to be sexy, one's going to be sad, and then we've got a couple of happy, upbeat songs that cover, you know, these contemporary issues. It's like, but that's, everyone can see through that, and that's one thing about human beings. As much as I'm skeptical about the human race generally, I do think there's one truism about the human race, and this is where I still sometimes hold out some hope for our ability to continue to exist as a society and as an entity. You look at what people respond to in sports, for example, or what people respond to in really kind of in any sphere of life. They always respond to authenticity. They respond to someone who has that ability to strip away that kind of additional layer of protection that guards their authentic self from the rest of the world. Funny enough, we spoke to Kane, or when we spoke about Kane earlier. When I had Kane on the podcast, he was talking to me about how he gets people, or how he coaches people on getting more of that emotion out of their vocals. And he says with men, what he gets them to do is practice singing songs sung by women. So he would tell them to do like a PJ Harvey song or a Chelsea Wolfe song or something like that. You know, we're talking like dyed-in-the-wool extreme metal vocalists. And he's like, when they start doing that, all of a sudden they start to feel like, or you start to hear their those sort of naked raw emotions come out, and when they've mastered it, they're able to then truly express that from an anger perspective, or from a sadness perspective, or whatever the case may be. But even, I mean, so let's take somebody else. So Aaron from My Dying Bride, it was interesting what he was saying to me when he was on the show. We were talking about his vocal performance, and he was saying that he wasn't happy with the vocals on Ghosts of Orion. And the story behind it is very, very sad, because obviously it was against the backdrop of his little one getting sick. But he said like it had worn him out so much emotionally and exhausted him so much mentally that when he went into the studio, he just could not get that performance out of himself that he normally would. And so that they had to do the multi-tracking and the auto-tuning for the first time ever in his voice. And he says he hates it. He doesn't like listening back to it at all because of that.
Yeah, that's definitely something I really appreciate. I didn't know Kane, that's how he kind of approached his singing, but I really appreciate it, and that makes complete sense. It's almost you're breaking it down and like reconstructing how they approach kind of screaming.
It's like get out of your comfort zone. That's
without a doubt. Just you mentioned Deicide earlier.
Yeah,
I would completely concede that Glenn's voice is, nowadays it's just too, it doesn't have the same intent and feeling that it used to have. But the first Deicide record, as in terms of just a nakedly angry, hateful vocal performance, there's fucking very few things compared to that. It is absolute genius. Such a shame that he decided to ditch because he wasn't even growling; he was just shouting. It was pure magic. But Tentakel, I wanted to talk to you just again about the musical direction that this record took, because, like I said, it's a much more complex, much more challenging record than Solar Spectre. So, was the intent from the get go to do something like that, or is it something that just sort of developed organically as you went about the creative process?
Well, now knowing that basically the first and the second album went out back to back, and it was over the course of 3 months, I think. It was 2017 when we stopped. We basically stopped my previous band and laid it on ice, and all of a sudden I had time, and I was like, okay, I need to do something. And I think I just started. I just didn't think about what I'm doing and how. I mean, I had like a studio experience. I know what to do and I know how to emulate things. So I just went and did what I felt was right. And this is how Solar Spectre came out. And then I was like, okay, I have this now. It's a complete album. It sounds complete to me. So, okay, I have a few leftover riffs. I'm going to start with them. And I just didn't stop. So basically the Anticurrent went, yeah, I didn't stop composing. It was like, okay, I have this block of 9 songs, and now I'm going to. This feels like an album. I'm going to put it aside. It's finished to me. It's okay, and then I just continue. And this is how the Anticurrent came about. I was still didn't stop or bother to think what I'm doing here, but maybe after I had written the first one, I knew a bit better what to do and how, and I still struggle to. I just struggle to accept that people think it's a much more complex album, but because to me it kind of isn't. I wonder why, or I try to understand why people would say it is, because to me it's like. I mean, there's one thing I did. I have done differently. I was composing the basic music, the basic songs. I sent them to Xen. Then he sent back his vocals. And then what I didn't do on the first album, I was experimenting with additional layers. I took part of the vocals and I kind of warped them and distorted them until they became sound effects. And most of the strange sounding space stuff on the album, I would call it, like the weird machinery screams or whatever, that's actually the vocal tracks of all the vocalists on the album that I just kind of wrangled through effects until they sounded inhuman or something out of deep space. I don't know. So maybe that's an additional layer. That's the only thing that's different between Solar Spectre and the Anticurrent.
I think there's a little bit more experimentation when it comes to some of the electronics and synths compared to Solar Spectre, which is maybe why people maybe think it's a little bit more complex. To me, I'm not entirely sure as to whether I find it more complex or not. But it just generally feels a bit more experimental.
Yeah, so I would say if I were as an outside observer, right, had I not know about them being written back to back, what I would have interpreted it as being, Solar Spectre was kind of the first stab at doing that. It was a successful attempt. People really liked it and responded to it. And then from that, you take a degree of confidence into, okay, now we can really ramp the volume up even more for the next one, and we can lean into all of the themes and the elements that we do sonically, lyrically, and really, really kind of step it up. And that then seems to me to be what came out of the Anticurrent. The reason I'd say it's more complex, it's hard to put into words. It's there's in some cases there's more subtlety to the record. So those pattern interrupts that you spoke about, for example, I mean they're there, but there's a lot more of that kind of hypnotic sort of a droning kind of effect to it. As Xen has said, much more experimentation. The album feels like a lot more dense to me, like sonically dense. It feels like it's an oppressively heavy listen. Now, it may also be because when I heard Solar Spectre, the first time I listened to that was on headphones, reasonable headphones, but the Anticurrent I had on the hi-fi. So, I had like the full massive feel of like the speakers and stuff around me, the subwoofer going. So maybe there's that as well. But it just feels like a more complex record. And actually, when I say it's more complex, I mean that as a compliment as well. I feel like it's musically a more accomplished record than Solar Spectre. It's something where I like, one of the things that I always in the back of my mind, it's almost like a reflexive thing when I listen to bands. I think to myself, like, would anybody else be able to do this? And the Anticurrent, you kind of get into a place where it's like, I can't think of anyone else who's pulling this off successfully. Well, certainly not with the sort of consistency and the character that you've done with this record.
That's great to hear, because it's like it's always great. I mean, I'm talking about influences, and inspiration, but it's always great to hear that what comes out of all your inspiration and influence that you put into your own music is forming something new, something on your own. Like, that's a great compliment, actually. Like, does it feel like anyone else could or is doing the same? And you say you kind of, I know that you also like have a huge knowledge of bands and music, and having people like you say that's a really big compliment, man. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, good. I wouldn't say it if it weren't so. So the one thing that I was curious about, though, the Yay and Trans Imperium cover that you put on there. I do like the song very, very much. I've had I've had my beef with Ishan over the course of the last year or so.
How can anyone have beef with him? He's one of
my issue stems from the fact that I mean, first it was the comment about The Weeknd being darker than most black metal coming out. I thought to myself, like, bro, black metal is in an absolute
he could have been having a moment
now. Perhaps. But then also, I do think to myself, if you're gonna, I've said it before on the show, if you're gonna hammer on a genre, then I expect you to be producing music that's superior to anything else that someone is putting out in that genre. And he's not at all. I don't think his EPs are good whatsoever. I don't think any of his solo records, with the exception of Angel, was worth anything. And increasingly, what I feel is, I think as soon as you took Samoth out of the equation, I don't like Prometheus, and I think the reason why is because Samoth isn't there to rein in some of his more progressive tendencies.
It's the first Ishan album. It's not the last Emperor album.
Correct.
Yeah,
100%. Because Nine Equilibrium was excellent. Anthems to the Welcome to Dusk is excellent. I mean, Night's Eye Eclipse is one of the best ever. But it's those two people needed each other, I think, to create that magic. You needed the beastliness of Samoth, together with the creativity of Ishan to create that kind of magic. Again, we spoke about Guns N' Roses earlier. Without Izzy Stradlin in the band, it's terrible. It's unlistenable. You need his guitar style to complement Slash's guitar style to create that magic. So what I'm saying is, Emperor is the Guns N' Roses of black metal.
Sure.
But yeah, what made you decide to cover that song?
That's kind of a personal thing. It's like, I mean, I have Marta as a guest vocalist there. You know that Marta is also my wife, or if you didn't know, then you know now. And she is also the singer of Tolkelichter, so we have been in the band together before, which is part of the reason that Tolkelichter is not active anymore, because, like, with a married couple, and 2 children, it's basically impossible to play shows and to rehearse in a way that doesn't feel like a burden. So we decided to not be in a band together anymore, but I still like to make music with her, and I can say with relative confidence that she will appear on every Omega Infinity album going forward. Because I want to have part of her on what I'm doing, in a way. So, and Trans Imperium, apart from, I mean, you said that if Ishan's going to bash black metal for The Weeknd, and then saying that he needs to accomplish something in black metal. I would say this song is his accomplishment. He can lean back and be safe for the rest of his life, because that to me is one of the best written, most ferocious, most violent, but also melodic songs in black metal throughout the whole genre. I like this. It's so much is going on, and I mean, when I was dissecting this to cover it, I was like, okay, tempo change again, tag change. What's this? What's that? Oh my God! What are they doing here? What are they even doing here? How can I recreate this? And I didn't have any tabs or whatever to. I was trying to dissect it with what I was listening to, and I was trying to get, okay, well, what's even happening? And I did my best to recreate this. So the whole screeching guitar stuff, it's like so weird, and I think this is why I choose particular this Emperor song. But then there is also the private, or at least the personal element, because when I met my wife, and that's not Borat now. When I met my wife, we met in the local metal pub in Hamburg. She was an au pair from Poland, second month in Hamburg, and she was like, she need to go out, she need to meet people. So where are the metal pubs? And we met in that pub, and we met on a Thursday, because Thursday was Black and Death Metal night. So there was always this DJ Holger, which is still kind of a friend, well, Facebook friend at least, and it was like a very close community. There were always just a handful of people, like maybe a dozen. On a good night there were like 20 people, and we went there for years. Like Thursday is always, we went there, Black and Death Metal night, and we would get wasted, and we would listen to music. We would, stand. There was, in front of the DJ booth, there was this space where you could stand, and we just, we choose songs, and then we went and headbang the shit out of the song. I had long hair back then, and even when I didn't have long hair, I was still like, yeah. And I did that a lot with my wife, who initially showed me Emperor. I didn't know them until she showed me. So I think, and Trans Imperium, I think it was the first song that she showed me, and it was like, that just hit me, like, man, how, what is this? And it kind of became our song,
Yeah.
So we would like go up to Holger, to the DJ, and we was like, okay, can you play Emperor for us? And he was like, yeah, you got it, mate. And then the song came up, and we just, standing there, indulged in the music. So yeah, it's kind of our song, So I needed to do that song, and I needed to have Marta on it.
Yeah.
And I was telling Zen right from the start, like, okay, she's getting the spotlight here. And he was like, why doesn't she do it alone? And I was like, can't happen, because this is still Omega Infinity. So no matter what, you will be on every song in at least some function, even if it's just background vocals. I mean, there is. Yeah.
Go on. I mean, I've always
just one. Yeah, just we do have a lag here. Sorry. just one more sentence. There is a song on the third album that will be kind of hard to do with Xen, but we're still going to do it. You know which one I'm talking about. But still, you're going to be in the background because it wouldn't be Omega Infinity if you weren't on every song. I would say.
Look, I don't mind being in the background some of the time because I have too many bands anyway, and I get sick of seeing myself everywhere. But I mean, when it comes to Emperor, I have, Emperor is always the first band I'll go to say that I would love to do a cover for Emperor. And I've always considered Emperor has always been one of my favorite black metal bands of all time, particularly Anthems to the Welcome to Dusk. And I've always wanted to cover a song off there. And so when it was suggested, it was just like, I don't necessarily care how much of the vocal stuff I have to do on that. I'm just happy to be able to share an Emperor song that we've kind of, I guess, reimagined in some form.
Yeah.
So maybe in future we'll do another Emperor song. Who knows?
And look, I should clarify. It's not. I'm not bashing the past. I mean, their early discography I love. I mean, as I said, those three albums I mentioned now. What's the name? In the Nightside Eclipse, Anthems of the Welcome to Dusk, Nine Equilibrium. Absolutely sensational. Amongst the very best 90s black metal ever. It's more my beef is if you're going to slate. I mean, Nurgle Behemoth does this an awful lot nowadays too. If you're going to slate a genre, then your current form needs to be on a. It needs to give you license to be able to slate a genre. I don't mind a degree of because to me in some ways it's arrogant, but I think the other thing that why I don't like it, to me it's an insult to the many bands that were in, I mean, especially with Nurgle, the many bands that were inspired by you to go out and start a band, and in some ways, especially I've spoken to so many people, you really get that level of sincerity from them where like they're creating music almost in a way as a tribute to a lot to these folks. I mean, what's his name? Thomas Fisher has done this an awful lot as well. He's like, oh, there's no soul. All the new music sucks. It's like, dude, you know how many bands are out there that are exist because of you? Chris Barnes, the worst offender of them all. They exist because of you, and you're basically just spitting in their face, and it's from a place of ignorance because. In terms of the level of creativity, the quality of stuff coming out right now is fucking fantastic. There's no two ways about it. I'm also one of those people that can get stuck on a lot of old stuff. I mean, recently my big thing has been Kiss, like Kiss Alive. I've been absolutely playing to death, but it doesn't take away from the fact that again, even just today, there's like 3-4 bands that have put out records and they're all fucking sensational. So, and again, Omega Infinity, another band that is kind of, pushing the boundaries on what extreme music can be or what black metal can be all the time. So, but that being said, that's kind of neither here nor there. I do like the story very much. My fiance, sadly, I don't think we will ever share a song. The closest we'll come is, so she likes King Dude very much. And she likes the song Lucifer. For some bizarre reason, Lucifer is the light of the world she really likes. So that's probably the closest we're going to come to sharing a song. But when it comes to the heavy stuff, from time to time, I think she'll just kind of indulge me out of the goodness of her heart. And I'll say, fucking listen to this. It sounds so cool. And then she's like, yeah, that sounds all right. But that's about as close as we get. So tell me something very quickly just before we wrap up. So third album, you say is the writing is done.
Yeah. Just the vocals go. We even have guest appearances ready.
Ah, okay.
So yeah.
Sorry, Zen, you were going to say?
No, all I need is a moment to myself between my bands and that sort of thing, and I can record the vocals, and we can do what we need to do with this release.
And this, I assume, like in the 90s when bands used to talk about their records, they're like, "This is our most satanic record to date." I assume this is your most satanic record today.
Sure. I mean, I never see any as either better or worse. It's a progression. It's you create. Well, that's where you are at that point in time. So I don't necessarily think you can kind of necessarily think that this album's better. I mean, it's a lot of the time when people say that, to me, it's ultimately just fresher, and therefore it's more appealing to you. Whereas, it doesn't mean it's any better. It's just, part of that's hype, I guess, for a lot of people out there. But
it's a very hackneyed thing as well, right? If, again, anyone who's been around enough, or at least who doesn't have a high tolerance for repetition, will go, what else is the dude going to say? Yeah, is he going to turn around and say, well, right. I don't know about this one. we worked hard, but it's actually a load of shit in comparison to our previous album.
Well, it's exactly like interviews. Like when you talk to you, it's like a conversation, and you have an in-depth knowledge of the bands you talk to and that sort of thing. Whereas if you talk to a lot of magazine interviewers, a lot of them have done zero research. They know nothing about the band, and they ask the standard questions. And it's like no one really wants to know the same shit over and over again.
Yeah.
It provides nothing. And a lot of people don't even end up reading those interviews.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, again, that's kind of the thing that I wanted to, very consciously get away from. And I've always, especially over the last couple of years, I've tried to sort of evolve the podcast in my mind and how I approach every conversation. I would have this exact same conversation with you if we sat down and had a beer. There'd be no difference. And speaking of which, Tentakel, once again, my apologies for not being able to make it out to London. As you no doubt realized when we had like a little smattering of snow, this place is the most or the least weather resilient country on the face of the earth. Like in the winter, the tracks are too cold, so the trains get cancelled. In the spring, there's pollen in the air, trains get cancelled. In the summer, it's too hot, the tracks expand, trains get cancelled. In the autumn, there's leaves on the tracks, trains get cancelled.
I think there's something with that, because the same thing happens in Australia. And where did we originally come from? Well, apart from Aboriginals, we came from England, so there's something connected there, which I think we're just there's this level of uselessness.
Yeah, I remember when we had a reasonably heavy snowfall year. I mean, and by heavy I mean by UK standards, it was like maybe 2 inches. But then I remember seeing a documentary at the same time about Finland, and they would have like 12 or 15 inches of snow overnight. Next morning, by 6 o'clock, everything's cleared, runways are cleared, planes are flying, trains are going. Life doesn't change. Over here, if we ever had 15 inches of snow, I guarantee you the country would ground to a halt for the next 3 weeks, minimum. But did you have a good time? Is a question I should ask.
Yes, I did. I really did. We were there with the family, and it was like this bigger family vacation with my dad, because initially I wanted to take my dad with us because I wanted to visit that particular gin pub in London, which I did. So my devious plan was to leave the children with him at the hotel and go out with my wife to that pub. So that didn't happen quite as we planned it, because my wife caught pink eye while she was there.
Oh, shit.
And then she caught also some kind of infection, which I think one day she completely stayed at the hotel because she couldn't do anything. She was like, okay, I'm going to, lie here in bed and just be miserable because the day after that we went to see the Warner Studios, and she wanted to go with us. So she just bought a couple of drugs and, took everything she could. And then she was at least functional for one more day. But on Thursday, when I visited that particular pub, she was like, I can't go. I'm sorry, man. And, I always had 3 seats reserved. So in the end, so you couldn't come, my wife couldn't go, so I just took my dad and my brother, and we went out there.
But as long as you didn't take the kids.
No. I don't.
This is going to burn just a little bit. Yeah. So yeah,
I don't even know. I don't think kids are allowed in a pub. So
no, I don't think so either. I mean, it depends, right? I live in the countryside over here. No one gives a shit. So you can take it. You can't obviously buy them a beer, but you can take them with you. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think you go through a pub. It was quite the experience. You go through the pub, and then they would open a secret door at the back, like there were bookshelves, and one of the bookshelves open, and then you have a little staircase going up, and then you would enter kind of a Victorian saloon, and there you have the gin pub. So it was quite the experience. But yeah, we did other things too. We visited a lot of, we did a lot of sightseeing. It was quite packed, but yeah, it was great.
That's one of my big gripes with this place. It's overcrowded. I mean, that's why I moved out into the countryside, because I live about 80 miles out of London now. So, and there's no one for miles, which is ideal for me. I don't mind going into London when the occasion calls for it. It's nice to be there, but I want to be able to switch off that chaos.
Yeah, I mean, for a week,
my
as a
old
tourist,
age, I don't. Yeah, as I said, in my old age, it's not something I want every day anymore.
I can relate. Yeah. But again, if you go there for a week as a tourist, it's okay. But it's definitely, it's full, it's crowded, and yeah, would I want to live there? I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
Never, not in a million years.
And it's expensive as shit.
Big time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. An absolute pleasure catching up with you again, as always. And we will definitely do this again soon. Maybe even before album number 3. It's always one of those things, like whenever we speak, I feel we've got at least an hour's worth of additional runway to go. So anyways, take care of yourselves, and we will speak again very soon.
All right, it's been a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, and looking forward to the next one.
Definitely. Take care, folks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was Creation by Omega Infinity. The album is the Anticurrent, their second record, available right now on Season of Mist. Check out the Bandcamp link in the description to the podcast if you like what you heard. Let them know who sent you if you buy any music, and a big thanks and a shout out to Tentakel and Xen. Always a lot of fun catching up with those two, and they will be back without a shadow of a doubt. Speaking of recurring guests on Into the Necrosphere, I have had Michael of Vredensdal, better known as the Goblin Reaper, on twice. We need to get a third one in the diary, and part of the reason we need to do so is because his new record, Sonic Devotion to Darkness, is goddamn fantastic. Now, I became a fan of Vredensdal and contacted Michael when I heard these, I think it was the second Vredensdal record, The Tyrant Shade. I did so thanks to Kelly T of Slave to the Underground, who I had on for I think it was the 2020 countdown of our favorite records. She mentioned this as one of her favorites, and I listened to it subsequently and absolutely loved it. I also enjoyed very thoroughly the sequel to that record, Silence is Eternal. Now with record number 4, I think one of the most interesting things about observing Michael through his musical journey has been to see how much more confident this young man sounds with every successive release. And as much as Silence is Eternal represented a step up from the Tyrant Shade in terms of musicianship and in terms of confidence, I think Sonic Devotion to Darkness multiplies that again. This is an album that, I think in terms of performance in particular is really so much more aggressive, so much more dynamic, and so much more heartfelt than Silence is Eternal was. And really a lot of that comes from confidence. And, clearly I think Michael is starting to get a sense of, what he's particularly good at, and he's developed enough of a following now to know people buy into it as well. And I think it's empowering him to sort of really be his best. Musically, the album starts off with a really cool, very eerie acoustic-led intro entitled Between Worlds. It has, to me, a very quintessentially American feel, and I can't immediately I can't immediately think of a direct comparison, but it gives me the exact same vibe that some of Cobalt's records did. A record like Slow Forever or Gin, had that very American feel to it, even though, it was very clearly influenced by second wave Norwegian black metal. That is very much the case with this intro, and it is replicated across much of the rest of the record. On the surface, it definitely sounds like a love letter to second wave Norwegian black metal, but it's in the delivery that it feels quite American, in the best possible way. Michael's vocals sound, really aggressive. They're intelligible but really angry at the same time. There's a lot of variation in the drumming, which I think is awesome. But actually, for me, what elevates this is both the way that the guitar is played as well as the way that it's been recorded. So the recording is raw and organic, but it doesn't quite feel lo-fi, so it still has, a lot of impact, a bit of density and a bit of body to it. But there's a way in which Michael has kind of played his guitar on this record. And again, maybe it's about how it's been captured. It's not necessarily different. His style hasn't necessarily changed. But yeah, I'm trying to sort of wrap my head around exactly how to present it to you guys, but you'll hear it when you hear the song I'm about to play. It's in the way that he plays rhythm, for example. There's almost like a kind of a scratchiness, or this specific way in which he'll chug when he's playing things that just sounds so fucking aggressive and attitude laden in the best possible way, and it elevates every single song. Or the record is 9 songs. I don't personally think there's a weak spot on the record. I think if you like this style of black metal, you are in for an absolute treat, and I think that ultimately people that spend any degree of time with this album will find it sticking with them longer than most. So I'm going to pause it right there. Obviously, this comes with my most heartfelt recommendation, perhaps even a fully fledged top-notch. And I'm going to play one of my favorite songs off the record for you guys right now. No doubt I will ruin the Norwegian pronunciation of this. I believe that the song, the Norwegian title translates to Covered in Blood. And my attempt at pronouncing it is Swat I Blot. Zwart I Blot by Vredensdal off the album Sonic Devotion to Darkness. It's available right now on Soul Cellar Records, and like I said, I will definitely get Michael back on the show to talk about this album. Fantastic stuff as far as I'm concerned, and if you like that song, you're going to love the rest of the record. Right now, if you think that Beto O'Rourke is a cool guy because he used to skateboard and play in a punk band, firstly, you're a jackass. Secondly, it's time for you to get to stepping, because this is my weekly news rant. The journey begins with news of a new single by the band Death Goals. I've never heard of them before. I hope that Death Goals is a play on the unbelievably insipid and irritating Generation Z phrase life goals, which to me, if I see people say this outfit is goals, or this car is goals, or life goals for, you know, somebody's holiday photos, that to me is an immediate signal to no longer associate with or ever speak to them ever again. So hopefully, Death Goals is a bit of a fuck you to that style of communication, which, you know, again denotes a certain personality that it's not compatible with mine. But I've never heard of them before. It says here, Death Goals are premiering Year of the Guillotine, the last advanced single from their next full-length installment, A Garden of Dead Flowers, out on May the 5th. Like I said, don't know what their music sounds like. But this is the news rant after all. So, you know, I've said before, we're not going to cherry pick stuff to listen to just because I think it might be good. It looks suspiciously like one of the members of the band on this band photo they've included is picking his nose. But we'll leave that debate for later on. Let's hear what Year of the Guillotine sounds like. We may as well stop it there because the song is only 1:15. I mean, in keeping with my loathing of Generation Z, the opening riff very much sounds like an adult man having a temper tantrum. Perhaps that adult man is based out of Portland, Oregon. So we've seen there's plenty of video footage of adult men having temper tantrums in Portland, Oregon. And then, I mean, when the verse kicks in, it's all right. But I mean, yeah, I've heard this kind of music done many times before. I would say I can't name one right off the top of my head, but if you gave me 15 minutes and there wasn't a segment recorded without any sort of preparation whatsoever, I could probably find at least 2 to 3 bands that have made music that sounds almost exactly like that, or have a song that sounds almost exactly like that. So, I mean, if you know, it falls in that category where somebody plays it at their house when you're there for a barbecue, and I'm not immediately going to take a hammer to their fucking stereo system. But yeah, it's just it doesn't do much for me. So let's move on before I say things that are too mean. What else have we got here? Dawn of Ouroboros, Testudine's single disclosed. Black and progressive metal unit Dawn of Ouroboros premiere Testudines, the new and last single ahead of their upcoming full-length release, Velvet Incandescence, which is due out on April the 21st. Now, once again, big fan of K-Leech Calling, that features essentially Tony and Chelsea from Dawn of Ouroboros. I'm not sure whether Yuri, the K-Leech Calling drummer, is in the band. But that first single that they put out off this record was, I mean, it was excruciating for me to hear, especially because of how much I like K-Leech Calling. So I enter this one with a degree of skepticism, possibly even a degree of fear. We'll see what Testudines sounds like. I mean, I'm in the same place. Okay, actually, no. Let me backtrack. I'm not in entirely the same place that I was with the first single, because this is much better than that song. I like that opening riff. I feel like the drums and the riff aren't necessarily playing together well. It feels like the song should be. I mean, there should be basically a different drum beat to go with that riff. As I said, individually they're not bad. Then you've got Chelsea coming in with her voice. She sounds excellent, as always. I mean, I've said this before. She's a phenomenally talented vocalist. As far as the rest of the song is concerned, like I said, there's just something I can't quite put my finger on that's just not working. Yeah, it just feels out of sync. That being said, way, way better than that first single. And I do appreciate that they're looking to do something that is unique and that is original. And that's, again, part of what appealed to me about Kylie's Calling. I think the jumping off points for both projects is just quite different. Kylie's Calling is very dark, very atmospheric, and every single thing worked together really well there, which I would assume is probably why it ended up on a label like Deborah Morty. But yeah, this one, as I said, we're in improved territory over what we were at previously. So let's get back to it. Yeah, not bad. That to me would be, I mean, where that first single is an almost 0 out of 10. This is probably a 6.5 out of 10. That's how I would rank them. Okay, let's move on. There's news here about Arstider Lifsons, a German Icelandic folk or black metal formation that have shared news that they've completed their work on their new album Ardlock, as well as a new EP, Hermalauses. 3 instances of me completely fucking up the pronunciation of band names and album titles. Both are set for release apparently this year via Van Records. Just one thing to say. There is no music here, so almost no point in us looking at the article any further. But there's a new release off of on Van Records that Xen sent to me, and then Carl Hikara sent to me as well. I need to remind myself of the name. I've only had the chance to listen to one track so far, but good lord, it was fucking brilliant. I mentioned this because I will almost definitely have to review this in more detail at some point, and even maybe see if I can get somebody from the band on. It's called Soul on Varma, and the album title is also Soul on Varma. Genius stuff. Anyways, right, let's move on. Mournful Congregation premiere a new track. May the 26th will see the release of part 2 from the Mournful Congregation EP series, The Exuviae of Gods. For a preview, the Australian Funeral Doom Masters present the Forbidden Abysm track. Drums recorded at Red Lantern Studios, Portland, Oregon, by Evan Mursky. Everything else recorded and mixed at the Cave Studio in Adelaide, Australia, by Damon Good. Mastered by Brad Boatwright at Audio Siege. Don't know Mournful Congregation, but let's head over to YouTube because they only have a Bandcamp link there, so I do want to hear what it sounds like. Give me 10 seconds. There we go. Got it. It's on Osmos Productions as well, which that's normally a sign of quality. So, or at the very least, that it's worth giving a quick spin to. So, which is exactly what we're going to do right now. I think I am potentially not the audience for this band because Funeral Doom has never been my thing. So yeah, unsurprisingly, I'm not entirely convinced by what I've heard so far. It's also an 8 minute and 50 seconds long song. So let's move to the about 5 minutes in, and let's hear if anything interesting is happening. But so far, not feeling it. 5 minutes in, it still feels like we're in the intro, so that is a skip from my end. May be good for some folks, not for me. Defiled have dropped a new track. Japanese death metal crushers Defiled are sharing their third preview track, Red World, off their upcoming album, The Highest Level. The latter will land in stores worldwide on the 28th of April 2023 via Season of Mist. No idea who Defiled are, but Season of Mist definitely gets a listen from me. This is a load of fucking shit. I mean, I no nice way to say it, but this sucks. I don't know how the fuck this was signed. I don't know who pushed for it to be signed. But so back when I was writing for Chronicles of Chaos, I would get sent a bunch of demos, and especially when I was contributing to, I used to have my stuff licensed out to a Chinese magazine as well, so I'd get a lot of grindcore and death metal stuff sent to me from China and from Japan. I must have heard at least 20 bands better than this crap. So there's just nothing to it. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, I'm glad they like what they're doing. I'm glad they're convicted and they're fans of death metal. I'm sure, technically speaking, it's not bad. But I mean, if I think of all of the bands we've spoken about on this podcast that are unsigned, it makes zero sense to me whatsoever that this band could get picked up by Season of Mist. I mean, phenomenal label. I've got nothing bad to say about them, but this is a load of fucking muck. So that's a 0 out of 10 for me. That's the opposite of top notch. It's a woke notch. All right. I must say, it's fucking slim pickings this week. So let's hope that something else interesting comes up. Sammoth unveil a Reichswald song. In support of their upcoming album release, Grebbeberg, black metal act Sammoth present the new single named Reichswald. The new music output will be released on the 16th of June 2023 on CD and digital through Hammerheart Records. No idea what Sammoth sounds like, but Hammerheart Records seems to be a little bit more prolific in the last couple of months than they've been for quite a while. So let's see what's going on that roster. This is much more like it, I'll tell you that much. This is aggressive, it's fucking mean, it's fast. Nothing remotely original about it, but you don't always need that. Sometimes you just need something that's going to fucking smash your face in. And this is definitely going to do that. I like it. I like what I'm hearing so far. It'll be interesting to hear what a whole record sounds like, because if every single song is like this, it's going to get a little tedious. But so far, so good. Let me give this probably the best compliment that I can possibly give it, and that is to say this. This is better than the New Immortal single, in my view. I think, similar style, but in terms of something that I feel is played with way more conviction, just sounds like just way more badass. Yeah, I just think it's way better. All right, let's move on. PANZERCHRIST have revealed a new track, Sabbath of the Rat. So it says here, Danish cult extremists PANZERCHRIST released their first new music in a decade. They present a music video for the new single, Sabbath of the Rat, taken from their upcoming long player. Details of the latter will be unveiled at a later date. I remember hearing these guys years ago, and I don't think they were a band that really kind of stuck with me for any reason, other than the fact that PANZERCHRIST sounded a lot like Panzerfaust. Speaking of which, I think it's time for Panzerfaust to put out that fourth installment of the quadrilogy. And I think it's also maybe time for me to reach out to Brock and get him back on the show. Especially with how fucking wildly off the rails Canada continues to go. Or the Canadian government continues to go, I should say. But anyway, we've got somebody who looks exactly like some of the protesters from Portland that you would see on the thumbnail of this video. So let's give it a listen. That is fucking badass. I take back what I said about them not sticking with me. I'm going to have to go back and revisit the PANZERCHRIST discography. I think that sounds fucking excellent. Really cool vibe. Like it's got that sort of droning, hypnotic viciousness to it. Love the production. The vocalist sounds absolutely badass. The video is creepy as all hell. This is getting thumbs up from the word go as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, this is fucking brilliant. I mean, there's no two ways about it. They just, every single thing that I like about black metal, they're just nailing. Like, fuck, awesome riff. The intensity just stays there from, you know, from the beginning to the end. This is top notch. All right. I keep making jokes about Portland, Oregon. And ironically, here we find Druth confirmed West Coast touring plan in May. Portland, Oregon black death metal band Druth announced a 2-week tour of the Southwest and West Coast United States. They begin the 2-week-long trek, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to read any of that shite. Could we hear what Druth sounds like? Let's have a gander. Nothing here, really. Here's their Bandcamp. Let's go on YouTube and see if we can find something there. I mean, I would imagine if you're a normal person, like a sane human being living in Portland, then there's probably a lot of reason for you to be fucking pissed off, because you're right at the cutting edge of the insane woke movement. You also happen to have one of the absolute worst mayors on the face of the earth presiding over your city. And you have a once beautiful place turned into a complete mess by people who think that the government should provide for them from the cradle to the grave. So lots to be furious about, and lots to, you know, have dark emotions and feelings that you feel the need to express. As it happens, just found a Druth song. The song is called An Apurist, so let's hear what it sounds like. I'm quite liking that, I have to say. And I don't know whether, I think I may have mispronounced them when I said Druth. I think it might be Drouth. Either way, it's the way that Mike Tyson would say drought. Drouth. Anyways, as I said, the song is called An Apurist. The album that it's taken off of is excerpts from a Dead Liturgy, and that was on Translation Lost Records in 2020. I'm quite surprised these guys flew under my radar, because this, like I said, this sounds pretty goddamn badass. Long songs is 9 minutes 51 seconds, so I've jumped to minute 5, and let's hear where this finds us. That is excellent. I'm definitely going to have to do a deep dive into these guys' back catalogue. Very, very cool indeed. Drouth is what I think will decide they're called. And yeah, absolutely something to listen to. Anyway, let's move on. Glory Hammer present animated video for new single. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Glory Hammer were in a spot of bother not long ago. because of some text messages that leaked where they used the N-word and said all sorts of sexist, misogynist things. Scum, basically. And I'm surprised to see that they're even being platformed by Metal Storm, given everything that's happened. And again, we talk about folks on this podcast that have, had brushes with controversy. But I mean, I think in the case of Gloryhammer, that particular article, you can Google it and you'll be able to find it. It was such a clear-cut thing. You talking about people that are just not, they're not our kind of people. They're just trash. Anyway, I've no idea what Gloryhammer sounds like, so I'm really wanting to listen to this song out of curiosity more than anything else. It says, Keeper of the Celestial Flame of Abernethy is the first official single by Gloryhammer's forthcoming studio record, Return to the Kingdom of Fife. It's out now and available for streaming in the form of an animated video clip created by Alex Henderson. The new album will hit the streets on June the 2nd, 2023. So let's hear what these roustabouts sound like. Interesting that Napalm Records even have them. So I mean, again, I have no idea. I would assume they've kicked out the members in question, but my understanding was it was like a banned WhatsApp chat where some of these things were said. So, anyways, let's not dwell on those things. Let's hear what the actual music sounds like. Right. Anyone who produces music like that needs to be sent straight to the gulag. No two ways about it. If I take over the world, you produce that kind of music, gulag. That is fucking absolutely terrible. I've listened to probably 10 seconds of it, and I can immediately tell you that if you're after edgy, dark music, the fucking Transformers theme song is going to be edgier and darker than this shite. I don't want to punish you guys too much, but let's hear another 20 seconds. If I can make it, we'll hear another 20 to 30 seconds of this. The only people that will listen to this nonsense are grown men that play Pokemon. I don't know who else is in the target audience. Grown men who have Legend of Zelda silk flags up in their bedrooms. Jesus, that sucks. So, on top of being misogynists and racists, their music is also fucking terrible. NATTVERD revealed track from upcoming album to promote their upcoming studio album release, I Helvetist Forakt, due out worldwide through Soul Cellar Records on May the 26th. Black metalers NATTVERD offer in listening another advanced single called En Pusender I'm Offenden. Pusender sounds a lot like Bus, which if you can speak Afrikaans, translates to cunt. So let's just ignore that. I'm probably not going to be able to say the song title again without laughing like a fucking teenager. Again, no idea what NATTVERD sounds like, but let's give this a quick listen. My childish musings about the song title aside, that is fucking excellent. Maybe it's because my senses were so shocked by the horror of that Gloryhammer song that this sounds like a masterpiece by comparison, but I'm really, really liking this. I mean, again, it hits all the right notes. Mean, badass, grim, great vocals, cool production. Yeah, everything is in place here to guarantee excellence. I'll tell you what, Soul Cellar Records are making some big moves at the moment, because I think Old Forest came out on Soul Cellar Records. Not bad, obviously. Vredensdal, they're putting out some very, very good stuff. And this is a fucking superb song. So, yeah, May 26th, I'll definitely be adding that to the list. I mean, this, I'd probably say, is another top notch. That's 3 top notch-eye for the top notches for this segment so far. Septic Flesh released new EP. Septic Flesh have released a new EP called Reconstruction that features 3 reimagined versions of songs from their latest full-length Modern Primitive. The new versions of these songs were recorded with an orchestra and a choir to achieve an entirely symphonic sound. Not something I'm usually interested in. It's the sort of thing where, you know, I play to my mum to show her how what great musicians these guys are, in spite of the fact that they make growling devil's music. But other than that, not something I'd spend any time listening to myself. Germany's black and thrash metal formation LUCIFUGE have premiered a new single, Physiognomy, what the fuck, of Failure. I mean, that is English. I butchered even the pronunciation of that. So, anyway, as part of their forthcoming 5th album, Monoliths of Wrath, due out on April the 28th via Dying Victims Productions. I can't remember when last I heard a LUCIFUGE record, but I do recall that what I heard I enjoyed. So, let's hear what this sounds like. So we're 1 minute and 4 seconds in. We'll probably hear the vocals in a second, but so far I'm quite liking this. Nice catchy riff. I like that beat. Sounds mean. Tell you what, when it comes to German thrash, this sounds way better than the last Creator record. As a matter of fact, the last 2, possibly 3 to 4 Creator records. I'm still trying to figure out how to pronounce that word. Physiognomy of failure. I don't even know what the fuck that means. Anyway, but yeah, music-wise, liking it. The vocals will make or break this, but it sounds cool, and I am quite partial to black and thrash when it's done right. I mean, obviously the guys, the standard bearers for that subgenre is Destroyer 666 without a doubt. This is not quite on the level of Destroyer 666, but it's not bad.
Today
Yeah, I like it very much. Very old school vibe on the vocals. I can see myself getting very properly down with that record. Good stuff. All right, let's do a couple more, and then we'll move on. Whitechapel streaming new video for "I Will Find You" track. I almost know this is going to be shit, but I'm going to listen to it anyway. It says here, Deathcore Masters Whitechapel have unveiled a new music video for "I Will Find You," the opening track of their 2021 full-length Kin. The video clip was directed by David Brodsky and Ben Savage. Never paid any attention to Kin because the record that they did previous to that was such a load of horseshit. I promised myself that my days of listening to Whitechapel were done. Also, the title "I Will Find You" reminds me a bit of Taken, which I personally happen to think Taken is some of the worst nonsense ever committed to celluloid. I do not understand why people like that movie as much as they did. It was so shit that it almost put me off to seeing Liam Neeson in another movie ever again. And I mean, the worst insult to the viewer is the end of the film where he takes his daughter to go and see the fucking pop strumpet that was a recurring character throughout the movie for voice lessons. I mean, it just, oh god, it was one of those things where I felt like fucking taking a claw hammer to my face while I was watching it. But anyways, let's hear what this sounds like. Sounded almost like he was yelling "the devil is gay" at the beginning of the song. I would assume it's actually "the devil is dead," but let's just hear that again. Hold on. No. Sorry, a little further back. Definitely the devil is dead, but it sounded suspiciously like the devil is gay. Either way, the song is nonsense, and that band are dead to me. Let us move on. Demolizer, never heard of them. Reveal new album title, month of issue. Vorbid put out new video. Let's listen to Vorbid and then let's head over to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. So Norway's Vorbid are presenting a Johannes Laukvik Nannestad directed and edited new official video for Derealization, a song taken off their 2022 album A Swan by the Edge of Mandala. Never heard of the album, never heard of the band, but they do come from Norway, so you almost are obligated to listen to them, in the hope that Norway is restored to its former throne as the leaders of black metal. I would say, I mean, it's still an exciting country for black metal, but if I had to say what countries lead the pack right now, I would certainly have to throw Poland in there. That new there's a band I posted about on Instagram called, I think it's called Cursebinder or something. Fucking brilliant. And then Australia certainly have to be in there. Matt Brizzo's Project Sick. He's been sending me some cuts as he's been doing that. Holy Jesus, it's good. When that album is released in its entirety, I think people are going to fucking soil themselves. And of course, I mean, you know, Werewolves is from there. Not kind of full on black metal, but doesn't matter. They cut across all genres. And who else? I mean, France, I definitely would probably put in there as well. There's just phenomenal stuff coming out of France, and Germany continues to put out strong strong outings all the time as well, as does the US, although I feel like the US hasn't been quite as prolific over the last couple of years as what necessarily they've been previously. And also, I don't understand why we've not yet heard a new Cobalt record. Slow, I mean, I spoke about it in the Vredensdal review, but that Slow Death is such a fucking genius record. Everything that band did is brilliant, but that album is utterly brilliant. So why they never did a sequel to that, I don't know. Anyway, let's hear what Vorbid sounds like. I have to say, I was expecting something very different from the intro to what's actually ended up transpiring in the main song. It kind of sounds like almost sort of a Cynic Death influence type band. It's not bad, but I was with that intro, I was expecting to hear blasting black metal. This is most certainly not blasting black metal.
Out of breath, out of time, present tense.
That song is out of time. It's not bad, but I mean, Christ Almighty, we've issued 3 top notches on this segment so far, so that's 3 albums, maybe even 3 back catalogs worth listening to. Where am I going to get time to listen to Vorbid? The answer is nowhere, because I'm a fucking busy man. Anyways, let's move on to the Blabbermouth Democrat's Guide to Rock Music. The first article, New Metal Church singer Mark Lopez doesn't pay attention to online haters. Not everybody's going to like everything you do. Let's see what he says. West Coast metal veterans Metal Church will release their 13th studio album, Congregation of Annihilation, on May the 26th via Ratback Records and Reaper Entertainment. The new album marks the first release since the tragic death of legendary frontman Mike Howe, who passed in July of 2021. It also marks the first album with new vocalist Mark Lopez, who came on board in the summer of 2022, and features the current lineup of founding guitarist Kurt Vanderhoof, guitarist Rick Van Zandt, bassist Steve Unger, and drummer Stet Howland. The new songs are a return to the band's musical roots, harkening back to the vibes of the self-titled first album and The Dark. Congregation of Annihilation was produced by Vanderhoof and is now available for pre-order in various bundle configurations. Is there a song? Is the important question. And I've got to confess, I know that Metal Church at one point were seen as, potentially like the next Metallica. I don't actually think I've listened to a Metal Church record in its entirety in at least 15 years, maybe more. And I've never been the biggest fan of theirs either. So I'm actually more curious to hear what it sounds like. I like the album cover very much, and actually the album title is pretty cool too. So it seems to me like there's a song that's been released called "Pick a God and Pray." So let's hear what it sounds like. I don't think that's too bad. I must be honest with you. I think that's fucking better than Screaming Suicide or Lux Eterna. The singles that Metallica put out off of 72 Seasons, or the first two singles they put out. I think that's way better. Let's move to minute 2, when clearly we've got some vocals coming in. I'm curious to hear what this new vocalist sounds like. I think this is pretty cool. So cool, in fact, I would say that Mark Lopez is right in saying the haters can fucking do one, because he sounds pretty good as a singer, and I think that song's quite cool as well. Like I said, way better than the first two singles Metallica put out off of 72 Seasons, and I would say better than the 72 Seasons title track too. All right, Ghost announces Phantomime covers EP, shares Jesus He Knows Me music video. I don't even want to think of putting myself through that nonsense. Watch Deersight perform in Orlando. Big news here. Into the Necrosphere favorite, Ishon, says he would be open to making new Emperor album under right set of circumstances. So it's written here, Emperor frontman Ishon says that he would be open to the idea of him and his bandmates writing and recording a comeback album under the right set of circumstances. If you hear the dog moaning in the background, it's because she's locked in the living room with me. Let me just let her out, and then I will be back. Right, I'm back. Emperor's last album, Prometheus, The Discipline of Fire and Demise, in my view, a complete and utter disaster, was released in 2001 and was written entirely by Ishon, which was one of the biggest mistakes. The band broke up shortly thereafter, with Ishon going on to pursue a solo career, while guitarist Samoth partook in a variety of bands, including Scum and Zyklon. They failed to mention here The Wretched End, which was fucking genius, and if you've not heard those Wretched End records, I strongly urge you to go and listen to them, because they are awesome. And I've mentioned many times before, if I held any degree of resentment over all these Emperor shows, I mean, I know they'll be cool to see, but it feels to me like that is taking Samoth's attention off of producing new Wretched End records, which to me is wrong. Anyway, it says here, Emperor is reunited frequently in ensuing years to perform live, but has continually resisted calls to release new material, something Ishon says he is no longer completely opposed to. I personally think they could put out something absolutely fucking sensational, and that would be the best possible thing that at least Ishon could do, because then he could legitimately say, hey, I have my gripes with the modern black metal scene, and here's me and my cohorts in, a extraordinarily influential band showing the young bloods how things are done. They still have the talent to do it. I mean, as much as I dislike Ishon's solo material, the beauty of that band has always been, as I've said, the interplay between Samoth and Ishon. And you can, especially once you listen or spend any time listening to Zyklon and to The Wretched End, you can hear where Samoth's influence would have come in and would have tempered some of those progressive leanings that Ishon has in his writing. And in that kind of interplay is where the beauty of this band was created. So I personally think they both still have the talent to do it. I mean, Samoth is a phenomenal songwriter, and Ishon does his thing, and I know there's a lot of people that like it. I could imagine with everything he's learned over the years of writing his own music, maybe getting some of that stuff out of his system. I think they could do something absolutely extraordinary. So to me, he who waits masturbates. They need to hurry the fuck up and actually do something. But anyway, it says here, from my perspective, I can only speak for myself. So far, it's been very hard to see where we would pick up, he continued. The legacy of Emperor is that we never compromised. I think that this is what appealed to the people who got into this music, that it's not made in a certain way for people to like it. It was just made totally without compromise, and people picked up on it, probably because of that honesty. If we were to make another Emperor record, should we make something that sounded like the old stuff, which would be easy, but it wouldn't really be true? Or should we pick up where we left off with Prometheus, with me doing more and more experimental stuff? Definitely not where you left off with Prometheus, because that album was fucking muck. I'm not sure what this would be. Sorry, I'm not sure that would be what the fans would want. No, they wouldn't. In the end, what would be the motivation outside of any commercial things? And I think for it to happen, we would have to come to a place where our ideas aligned and that it felt right to do in the same way that the shows have come together. And we are now in a place where it feels right to do, where everybody's kind of in the same place. I think they're probably closer, in my view, to finding that place than they realize. Because I don't think that Samoth has strayed too far away from the way that he writes music. And again, I don't even think that Ishon has strayed too far away from the way that he used to write music either. I just think that those two need each other. I think it's absolutely critical for this band to be successful. So, I mean, who knows? If he's hinting at it, I suspect there's probably more than just him kind of musing out loud. There may well have been some conversations that have occurred already. So if that does happen, I think it'll be absolutely huge. I think anything that's new that has the Emperor logo on it is going to be absolutely massive. So I don't necessarily think commercial considerations should play into it by any stretch, because I think that's baked in. I think it's just about whether they can make 8 or 9 songs that they're happy with, and I personally think they could do that quite easily. And I think they should do it now while everybody's still super into the band, and they got the legacy. They're doing the tours, a lot of interest in those tours. I think they should definitely do it. Metallica to perform 4 nights in a row on Jimmy Kimmel Live next week. Jimmy Kimmel, what a fucking idiot. A guy who I would pay good money just to kick in the crotch as hard as I possibly can. I think he's one of the biggest buffoons alive. Speaking of buffoons, D. Snyder says Twisted Sister will reunite in 2024 for appearances at different political rallies that need our support. I can only imagine who, and my eyes drawn first and foremost to Beto O'Rourke, who I joked about earlier. A little over 2 months after Twisted Sister's one-off onstage reunion at the Metal Hall of Fame in Agora Hills, California, Dee Snider has told Yahoo Entertainment that the band will come back together next year for special performances at different political rallies that need our support. The singer added, "We're all in favor of gonna go down to support Beto O'Rourke, but we couldn't schedule it. The band has a concern that the classic Twisted Sister song, We're Not Gonna Take It, is being co-opted by the extreme right, and that we want to make sure that people still know it's a song for everybody and it does not represent that selfish micro group. It is really for the mass people, the moderate people, the people that just want to live their lives, be themselves, and not have people tell them that they can't be themselves. So I think you'll see us at political rallies and stuff like that." I agree with the fact that there's a mass of people that want to, be able to live their lives and, not be hassled by people on either side of the fringes of the left or right. But to support Beto O'Rourke as a moderate, I mean, Beto O'Rourke is a bought and paid for politician who will literally fall in line with every single thing his party says in order to stay in a position where he can keep feeding at the trough. He's a uniparty member through and through, and there is absolutely no other way to see it. His history of flip-flopping on specific issues will tell you so. Equally, he seems to lean into any old far-left tripe that is trotted out by his party. But that's, I spoke about this last week, and I was talking specifically around, people's inability to think objectively, that I find to be most troubling about modern society. I think this is part of why political discourse is so completely dysfunctional, is, it's emotions first, facts last, and that is true of so many people, including people who you would think, on the face of it, should know better. I was listening to an episode with Joe Rogan the other day, great episode of the podcast, but then he goes and says towards the latter end of the podcast, and I think it was with one of the guys who's been working on the Twitter files with Matt Taibbi. I think it's Michael Schlomberger, I believe is the guy's name. But anyway, Rogan mentions at the end of near the end of the podcast, my favorite president, he declares, is still Obama because he was well spoken. So articulation apparently is now a reason to vote for somebody, not policy, not in hindsight, not actually analyzing the person's track record. Obama's track record as a president was fucking terrible. including but not limited to the fact that he oversaw a drone program that killed 90% innocent people. An absolute disgrace. If we're talking about, arresting presidents for breaking the law, he should almost certainly be standing trial for war crimes or crimes against humanity alongside George Bush and Dick Cheney. What he did was a complete and utter disgrace. He was a terrible president, same as Biden, same as Cheney. I would say, was Bill Clinton a bad president? I mean, he's a scumbag man, but he was actually not too bad a president. But yeah, I mean, he did do certain things without going down a rabbit hole now that were fucking atrocious too. But let's leave those sleeping dogs asleep. But my point is, you can't be talking about moderate and then support Beto O'Rourke. There's nothing moderate about him. But again, I guess no one is expecting much from D. Snyder. What frustrates me is that people like him, paint themselves as these political savants and people that know. I think the number of people that are, that have a, reasonably significant public profile that actually are able to think or approach politics objectively are few and far between, but the ones that I tend to gravitate towards most right now are Jimmy Dore and Russell Brand, and I particularly appreciate the way that Russell Brand differs with people, because I think he does it in a way that he kind of leans into his personality as someone who's quite charming and quite friendly, and I think that disarms the emotional element of the conversation. His appearance on the Bill Maher show a while back was, to me, a masterclass in this is how you differ from somebody, or this is how you differ ideologically, or differ, express a difference in opinion from somebody, and it not turn into a full-blown, bickering fest. But yeah, D. Snyder, what a dumbass. Let's see if there's anything else as we wrap up. So this one has been, this one's been carrying quite a lot of weight in the news recently. Speaking of dumbasses, Mick Mars on his Motley Crue bandmates. I carried these bastards for years. Motley Crue guitarist Mick Mars has given his first interview about his decision to file a lawsuit against the band that he was part of for more than 4 decades, claiming that he carried these bastards for years, insisting that he's not going to let anybody take away from his part of this company that made Motley Crue what it is. Mars's attorney, Edwin McPherson, filed the lawsuit on behalf of the guitarist in Los Angeles County Superior Court on Thursday, April the 6th, requesting that 7 corporate entities associated with Motley Crue hand over records related to their business dealings after he notified the band that he would be retiring from touring due to a medical condition. Mars claims the other members of the band formed a campaign to kick him out of the group and remove him from his ownership in the band's company. In the lawsuit, Mick said Motley Crue cut his percentage of profits after he announced he was stepping back from touring. Furthermore, he claimed the band's lawyers would make him feel like he should be grateful for even that small cut, because he didn't feel that they owed him anything at all. Because they didn't feel that they owed him anything at all. Mick also claimed that there was a full band meeting and they decided to unilaterally remove him from Motley Crue. Mick has also repeatedly accused bassist Nikki Sixx of gaslighting him about his guitar skills diminishing, despite the fact that Sixx didn't play a single note on bass during a recent tour, according to the guitarist. Mick claims all of Nikki's parts were pre-recorded. It doesn't surprise me to see these morons bickering with each other, but it does sound like Mick potentially has a point. It says here, the truth is I want to retire from touring because of my AS, an inflammatory arthritic disease that causes vertebrae to fuse. I don't have a problem remembering the songs. I don't have a problem with any of that stuff, but I do have a problem with them constantly the whole time telling me that I lost my memory. No, wrong, that's wrong, absolutely wrong. But my stupid body is telling me, no, don't do that, stay on the road. I'm going to be 72 years old, and I've been touring with these guys 41 years, helping build the brand, helping do this and that, and you're served with papers and going, this is crazy, this is stupid, I mean, come on. I think I don't know the ins and outs of the lawsuit, but I would say if he's not going to be touring, he certainly shouldn't necessarily be paid as much as somebody who's a full-time touring member of the band, but he most definitely deserves, whatever royalties are due to him for any ongoing sales of music and things like that. And I mean, he deserves to retain a stake in the band as well. He helped build the band for 41 years. So you can't just preclude the guy because he's no longer there. If he wrote the music and if he contributed to, the band becoming what they are, then, he deserves to get a bit of that sweet cheese. The interesting thing is going to be, as they reveal these business dealings, as they turn over the records, it's going to be what's in there. I would assume, hush money to the police for, whatever hit and runs Vince has been involved in, paying off drug dealers, that sort of thing. Those will be the commonplace entries. Paying for Tommy Lee's Viagra, paying for his Cialis. Anyway, nothing much else going on in the news worth mentioning. So that, my friends, I believe, brings us to the very end of this week's installment of my news rant. That wraps up another episode of Into the Necrosphere. Next week, I am back with Oscar of Altari. I have been raving about this Altari record for quite some time now, and it was a lot of fun to be able to go through that album in detail. A very heartfelt and honest conversation, which seems to be the theme of quite a lot of what I've been doing recently. And I do want to say thank you once again to everybody for the great reception afforded last week's episode with Cheyenne. That was one where we went into some, pretty spicy territory. And, I always love and am encouraged by the open-mindedness that is afforded both myself and my guests on this podcast. But I would never expect any less from the Legion. So I'm going to play out with a song off a record that's coming out in June. The record is by a band called Johnny the Boy. The album is called You. It's going to be available on Season of Mist. And Johnny the Boy, of course, featuring members of Crippled Black Phoenix. I was completely and utterly blown away by this album. I've heard it multiple times now. A member of the Legion, Quentin Farrow, dropped me a note and said I need to give it a listen, and of course I complied and gave it a listen immediately. It is fucking sensational. So I'm going to play a song off of that record for you right now, and I'm also going to say, whatever it is that you're doing, wherever it is that you are, I hope you stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.